Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Tonight, Zimbabwe's future continues to hang in the balance. It's not clear what is going to happen next. To be quite honest, the real power rests in the SADC Panel of Elders who have been called to Zimbabwe to discuss with the ZANU-PF government the SADC election observer mission's report, which was damning. Just to remind you, to catch up, some of you are not familiar with that report. The SADC report, when they came out after the last Wednesday's election, it was very clear. Those election processes were flawed and illegal. And it was very clear such a system cannot produce a legitimate government. This is not the first time SADC have come to this conclusion. They did so in 2008, and that led to the Government of National Unity of 2008 to 2013. To help me discuss this issue is Benjamin. Welcome, Benjamin.
Hello, thank you for having me. To our viewers, hello there, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Do you think SADC Panel of Elders are going to endorse Dr. Mumba's damning report, or are they going to do otherwise?
I think that the fact that they have actually come to Zimbabwe to come and meet up with different stakeholders, I think it shows there's some concern. Otherwise, they would have simply ignored the fact and, business as usual, or just waited for the update, and then they say what they have to say from wherever various points they are. But the fact that they actually have come to Zimbabwe, I think there's discussions and points that they need to speak up about, and they have concerns over. That's what I think.
Well, to be quite honest, in 2008, when SADC came to a similar conclusion, in other ways, condemned an electoral process, it was clearly not made it very clear they were not going to give ZANU-PF political legitimacy then. There was no need to call the SADC Panel of Elders. I think the main purpose of calling this SADC Panel of Elders is to see whether they can water it down, this report. And by the way, I don't know whether you are aware of it, all the SADC election observer mission members are in Zimbabwe and are meeting these panel of elders, except Dr. Mumba himself. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of it. Like I said, I'm glad you brought out the case that, this is not the first time there was a power sharing deal that was put in place by SADC. A lot of people are forgetting that the 2008 to 2013, there was the GNU, and it was facilitated by SADC, not by any other, but by SADC. So we should not say SADC has not done anything as far as rigged elections are concerned. Then I think it's looking back at the 2008 election, when SADC had to send, I would say, the elders, which was Mbeki and his team, to come and broker the deal between ZANU-PF and then MDC, and the MDCs actually. I think it's their diplomatic way of doing it, where they send people to come and try and talk to both parties, than doing it at the comfort of your own home or your own country. So this, for me, it's a proper channel. I think it's a proper channel. Send somebody that is well respected by both parties. And leaving out Mumba is okay for me, because ZANU-PF has got grievances with him. But that doesn't change the fact that the findings are still the same. SADC may try a diplomatic approach, but I think the result is still the same. Legitimacy for these elections, I don't see it coming. I don't see it coming at all.
Well, if it's not coming, it's because this panel of elders would have watered down the report. That's the argument. And at the present moment, some media houses are talking of how ZANU-PF is trying to bribe some of these panel of elders to water down the report. But again, I agree with you. We at the present moment, until the panel of elders has come up with a decision, we have to sit it out. But the only purpose for the elders to be called in at this point is because ZANU-PF that's not what the Dr. Mumba's report to stand as it is. Because if it was to stand as it is, then SADC will have no choice but to deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. And if that was to happen, then Zimbabwe would be in a position where either ZANU-PF will say, well, we'll go it alone and disregard the failure to get legitimacy from SADC. But I think that position is completely untenable, considering that all the other observers, like the European Union, the American Carter Center, the Commonwealth, all condemned these elections and clearly would not give ZANU-PF legitimacy. But those other ones would not matter if ZANU-PF could be assured of legitimacy from its own regional body, SADC. And the AU, if SADC was to say, we don't recognize this, refuse to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, the AU, I can tell you, they will follow into line too. So at the present moment, I think the AU would not make any pronouncement until SADC has made their own position clear. So at the present moment, the whole future depends on what this SADC panel of elders say. And they were called in to try to water it down. Because if they were not there to water it down, there's no need for them to be there. SADC election monitors had done their job. They noted what was wrong. And to be quite honest, SADC is always known to say ZANU-PF has been rigging elections. And in 2013, they were the ones who tried to get the elections postponed. But when that advice was ignored by not only ZANU-PF, but the opposition too, SADC threw in the towel. And they've since been turning a blind eye. But this time, they've decided, no, enough is enough. And they have stood firm and said these elections are not free, fair, and credible, and therefore then they cannot produce a legitimate government. But anyway, let's move on to the next item. I've got here a picture of CCC's deputy spokesperson, Mr. Siziba. In a recent press interview, he actually said that CCC rejected all the election process as flawed and was calling for fresh elections. Any comments on that one?
Oh, okay. So just before I comment on this, I wanted to say something that I think personally for me is very important. I would like to thank the citizens of of SADC, Southern African. They have come out and helped Zimbabwe in this time where Zimbabweans are crying out for help about these rigged elections. I can see on social media there's a lot of people from different countries, South Africa, Namibia, that are actually in support of the Zimbabwean persons, that what we are going through is not supposing to be. We are being robbed of our democratic right to have free and fair elections. And I would like to thank, and we should be able to note them as an important piece of the puzzle to get to our democracy back, or our rights back. So yeah, I just wanted to thank that. When it comes to the CCC calling out for new elections, I honestly do not see the purpose of new elections, given that who is going to run these elections? The same characters. What change will be derived from doing the same thing again? We can do it even 10 times. I don't think there will be any difference. I mean, look at the commissioners. There was the names of the commissioners that were what the composition of the staff of ZEC. There are a lot of children that that are running, the children of the elders in ZANU-PF that are running the commission, that are running ZEC. So what difference is it going to make? Even if we can have it as much as they want, they can call for it as much as they want, there will be no difference there. I think the call for elections is a waste of time. What we should be calling for is for reforms before we have a fresh election. And there's nothing that has been mentioned about that,
I totally agree. I think what CCC are envisaging here is that given the atmosphere and the desperation for the people to have a meaningful change, if elections were to be held, in a matter of 2-3 months, who is likely to win? It is CCC. And that is all they care about. But I agree with you. If we hold those elections in the present atmosphere, even if we say these particular elections will be supervised, as CCC are calling for, by SADC and the AU, it's possible it could be done. But if no reforms are implemented, even if CCC wins power, which they may even win the majority in parliament this time and in the Senate, but I think ZANU-PF nonetheless will still have some hold the balance of power. And ZANU-PF is renowned, as happened during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. It gave them the opportunity to regroup and come back stronger. And in this particular case, I don't see how that can be prevented. And as long as ZANU-PF holds the balance of power in the new government, after these quick elections are carried out, I don't see how, even if we assume CCC had the will to implement reforms, how they can implement those reforms. Any reforms they implement at all will be compromised. So I think we'll be back to where we are now.
Exactly.
That's the heart of it as well.
And let's be future oriented also a bit. If we could, even if the AU and SADC are just to preside over this one election, and then we say Triple C wins this election, what is to stop Triple C from doing the exact same thing, using the same, operation that ZANU-PF is using? First of all, we need to change the whole system of how we conduct elections. Our election body should be independent. Those are things that we need to fix. There should be separation between the party and the election body. That is one thing that we have to do. If we are not, otherwise every election we'll have to be calling the AU and SADC to come and watch over us. So I think for now, let's get the reforms put in place. Then we can have, I don't mind having a GNU for now. But at least we put the reforms that are actually, we get the help from United Nations or whoever needs to help us to agree to the reforms that we need, so that the environment is free and fair. Then only can we call to say, let's have fresh elections. Without doing that, it's a waste of time. We will still have the same way, and probably Triple C would be our pain again. Just the same way we were so happy when Mnangagwa removed Mugabe. We were so happy, and we all went and we sang songs of praise for him, only that it turned out to be not what we wanted. Now he's become a worse of a pain than what Mugabe was. So we don't want to go back into that cycle. Let's sort it out, get our house in order. Then we can talk of elections. I think Triple C here, they're on the wrong. I do not support for fresh elections with the current situation or political environment on the ground. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, to be quite honest, in fact, one can extend that argument even further. Even if there was a GNU at the present moment, the way Triple C will view it is that they should be in a commanding position. So even if there was a fresh elections and they win the majority in parliament and the presidents and so forth, and then they will readily agree to a GNU. The only reason why they are not agreeing to a GNU at the present moment is that if it's going to be composed of them and ZANU-PF will have the dominance again. And that's what they are scared of. But if they were the ones who were to be given the majority of the seats and the presidency particularly, I think they would happily accept the GNU. The argument then is, can we expect a Triple C ZANU-PF GNU to implement any meaningful reforms? The answer is no, because they are the same actors who were in the last GNU, and they failed to implement even one meaningful reform then. What Triple C are saying here is that all they care about is getting into power. And how they get there is almost irrelevant. In fact, one of the things they are still maintaining on this one here, these elections, is that they should have been declared the winner of these elections. And this issue of their being flawed and illegal becomes irrelevant. So what they want is the result. They want to work from the result. As long as Triple C are in power, the election process is irrelevant. And this is why they are so keen to hold the elections almost immediately, as soon as possible. As soon as the UN and, the African Union and SADC could make arrangements to have those people to supervise these elections, because they are assured that they would win, given the present desperation in the country. And that is all they care about. Once they've won, I don't think there will be any meaningful reforms implemented, and I don't think they will have the political will to implement them. And even if there was a new GNU, a GNU composed of CCC and ZANU-PF will never implement reforms. That is the tragedy we are in. And I can see why actually in 2013, SADC, when CCC failed to, well, MDC then failed to listen to their warning that you should not go into these elections without reforms. They gave up as well, even if they had called those elections not free, fair, and credible. They would have asked themselves, okay, if we do that, what next? And I think that question is being answered now. CCC's answer to that will be, let's have fresh elections again, and you will supervise them. As long as it's a way that will get them into power, how they are going to secure the democratic process there is irrelevant to these guys. That is the problem we have in Zimbabwe, in my view.
What I have to say may not be very popular amongst most of our viewers, but it has to be said. I think CCC are lying, and they have been lying to the people of Zimbabwe. Why am I saying this? CCC, they are also part and parcel of the problem that got us into this mess right now through participating in rigged elections and claiming that they have strategies in place that will stop this rigging. And we know this was a lie. And it's evident because ZANU-PF won the election and were declared to have won the election. We are just thankful that SADC, through the observers, saw it, otherwise. But otherwise, we would have been, back to square one, having to wait another 5 years. And hopefully, we're not going to have to wait. But then you come up and, start to think for yourself and see, okay, CCC said that they have plans on how to stop. Now they came and they said they have other plans that we don't have to wait. And those plans, according to what I've heard, is demonstrations for people to go out on the street and, expose themselves to the brutality of, the police, the army. And I think that is not fair. They claim they're the V11s. Why don't we use that route before we go to the extremes? If at least we go through the V11 and it doesn't work, then we can go to the extremes, right? Because SADC is there. And I'm sure when SADC is there, they should be able to see. Then for us to call for, for demonstrations, then what is the purpose of SADC then? Why is the panel of elders in Zimbabwe when we are already taking matters in our own hands? I think that is a very poor, thought out, decision, and one that will be very, very bad for the civilians or the citizens of Zimbabwe, those that choose to go through, with this action or mass demonstration. I think it's a very, very bad idea.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, it will probably be instructive to the listeners. The plan A here, in my view, is not in our hands. Plan A is for the SADC Panel of Elders to endorse the report from Dr. Mumba and his mates. In other words, condemn these elections and deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. that will take us into a new GNU. And in that new GNU, we have got to make sure that this time the players are not ZANU-PF or CCC. If they play a supporting role, that is the best that they should get, because it is utterly pointless to get this far and then get the same people who fail to implement even one meaningful reform to take us forward. If they fail to implement even one reform, then what hope is there that they will do so now? My answer to that is none. So I think we have got, if the panel of elders do us the big favor of endorsing the Dr. Mumba report, then we have got to stand up firm and say, now this time we want a government of national unity composed of people who are going to make sure that the reforms, the democratic reforms, are implemented and implemented fully. That is plan B. Plan A. Plan B would be if the SADC Panel of Elders betrayed us and turned around and watered down the report condemning these elections, so that ZANU-PF gets its political legitimacy. I think, in my view, there we are in serious trouble, because I really don't see any meaningful way out. One way would be for CCC to challenge the results in the court. And at the present moment, personally, I don't see that succeeding. I don't know whether you see that succeeding yourself.
Yes, I would go with, and I think the only viable option is point A. Unfortunately, it's out of our hands, but I'm very hopeful this is what is the most viable option right now. Because, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think CCC has got the V11s. If they have fewer than what they had in 2018. That's what I think. Our best bet is the panel of elders. I think this is exactly what happened in 2008 when Becky was sent, the vice president, the former president of South Africa was sent to come and oversee the negotiation of, power sharing between then MDC and ZANU-PF. And I think this is exactly, what is going to happen. I mean, I think ZANU-PF may say that the script was written by the same author, but if you saw the movie and you guys saw a movie together, I would be surprised if somebody says something that is different, because Zimbabwean elections on the day, it was a sham. That is the truth, period. So you can't expect somebody to say otherwise. Yes, SADC, I think they will play a diplomatic tone to try and bring everybody to the table. But as long as everybody is coming to the table, I'm fine with it. And I think that is the best position that Zimbabwe would find themselves. But then again, it's about, will these two do the right thing and implement the reforms? I'm skeptical, because CCC, honestly, people do not want to open their eyes. They are so engrossed in power, in having this power. One may think that's all they are.
Well, if we are back to plan one, then I think if SADC was to stand up firm and say these elections were not free, fair, and credible, and therefore then it should go into a GNU. Yes, it was SADC who decided last time that the GNU will be composed by ZANU-PF, and the two MDC factions. But I think in this particular case, SADC have had the experience themselves of knowing that ZANU-PF and CCC did not implement any meaningful reforms. So I don't think that we'll need to persuade them on that one. I don't think that will be a big issue. If we, the ordinary Zimbabweans, stand on their side, because I think in this particular case, if we make the mistake of supporting ZANU-PF and say, no, the ZANU-PF and CCC should be in the GNU, then SADC may be finding itself in a situation where it's saying, well, if the people themselves, that's what they want, fine, go ahead. But I think I was now talking of plan B. If SADC, the panel of elders, decide that ZANU-PF will be given a political legitimacy, what will our plan B look like? And I think what we agreed on is if CCC try to challenge the result in court, at the present moment, I agree with you. I don't think they've got the fee 111. They are claiming that they've won these elections, but they cannot prove anything. So on that score, I think we know what the result is going to be. If that fails, what next in plan B, in your view?
Well, they've already put it in motion that they are saying by the 1st of September, we go out on the streets. I think that is their next. Well, they've already cancelled this. Let's rule out the court, the court case. I don't think it's going to happen because, like we said, there are no villains. They have already gone straight to the streets. And I think this is the next course of action. And I think it's a bad decision. I still maintain it's a bad decision. We're better off waiting for SADC to hear what they say. Then if not, then probably you could do that. But I don't see the need to cause commotion while somebody is coming to talk to you. First wait to hear them out. And then if you do not agree to it, then you can go ahead.
Well, on that point, I must admit, if by Friday, if the demos are going to start on Friday and they take off, that may put pressure on the SADC panel of elders to not to endorse the elections. But if those demonstrations are quickly sniffed out, that would also give SADC the confidence that ZANU-PF can handle this. So I think that is a high risk maneuver, which in my view is typical of CCC, and I honestly don't see it succeeding, to be quite honest. Many people will be shot, but after a day or so of those demonstrations, I think we may be looking at the whole thing being snuffed out. I have never accepted this view, which is what CCC has always had here, that they can participate in flawed elections, give ZANU-PF legitimacy, and then try to remove them using street protests. It's a convoluted, ill-advised course of action, in my view.
I don't think we really need. I think it's pushing it, like you are suggesting. I hope that you are trying to put more pressure. I think the pressure is already there for them to water it down. Yes, they will tone it down a bit. I suppose that would be a diplomatic way of bringing everybody to the table. And this is also a diplomatic way of bringing everybody to the table by removing the element that they say is compromised, which Zanu is saying is compromised. So they have removed, Mr. Mumba out of the picture and tried to make it as neutral as possible. But I think the findings are still the same. They will not endorse the elections. So why then should we then go to the streets and then try and protest when, first of all, let's listen to what they have to say. Then if we don't like it, then we can make actions. And like I said, other SADC citizens are in support. The whole, the internet is, social media is full with with solidarity messages to the people of Zimbabwe. So I think we have better ground by being diplomatic and having to listen and tabling what needs to be done. Not to fight which ministry we are going to have, like what they did the last time. But the first thing is, you can have any ministry, but the first thing that we need to do is, let's see the reforms being implemented before we even say we are an inclusive government. I think this is what we need to do.
Yeah, but I think on the issue there of Plan B, i.e., SADC has washed their hands and they've endorsed ZANU-PF's victory. The first issue of a court challenge, I think this time I totally agree with you. CCC do not even have the evidence that they won the election. They're just making in the usual empty claim. The process itself was flawed, but for them to say they won is another matter, because if you claim that you have won, you've now got to prove it in a court of law that you did indeed win. And in this case here, as it happened in 2018, they failed to produce the V11 forms to show where they got their numbers from. And I don't think this time it will be any different. And I believe that the court challenge is something that they realize it's a dead end. And by the way, if they're going to mount a court challenge, they've got to do it within 7 days of the elections being declared. So if they were declared on Sunday, we are looking at, they've got to do it by this Sunday or Saturday evening. I'm not sure how they'll work out the 7 days. But if they don't lodge their court challenge, then it's considered to be over. And this issue of then starting the demonstrations, as this poster portrays, from 1st of September until victory, it's all very well. I think street protests will be treated very harshly by the regime if the pass is to go by, and if they are snuffed out within a few days, then I think the regime would confidently, even if I agree, even if at this point the panel of elders had not made a decision, if the regime snuffed out the street protests, the panel of elders will quickly endorse ZANU-PF as the winner. And to me, that will mark the end of it. I don't see CCC being able to mount another street protest, once it has been snuffed out. I don't see that happening. I don't see what else the people can do in this particular instance. Do you?
No, I think, I don't see, anything that we could actually do from here on. I think our best bet is, unfortunately, we don't have any much say in it, or we do not have much control in it. but it's all in SADC's hands. And I think this is the best bet. I honestly believe they will do the right thing. These elections were not free and fair. And with the happenings that are happening all over in Africa because of, you know, refusing people their democratic right, it's evident they would want to stop this at some point. You know, the coups that are happening all over is because of the same situation that Zimbabwe is finding themselves in. And I think they would want to start snuffing it out. And this has to stop, especially when it comes to Zimbabwe. And I think it's very evident across anybody that is neutral could see that what ZANU-PF was doing on election day was illegal. You cannot have a survey, even if you call it a survey, going in. You have a survey going out, and a survey does not need any ID, and that's just one. There are many. You cannot have an election body made out of of your kids. It's shameful, really. So, despite all this, then you had CCC that decided to go and participate in the election, regardless of all these things that were happening. Then you got to also question their sanity. So here we find ourselves, we have lost all power. Now it's up to SADC to answer our prayers, and there's nothing we can do. And I think going for the protest is a very bad idea. These guys will kill. We should learn. They will kill. And I have said it before, I think this faction of ZANU-PF is less brains and more muscle. They will kill us. So let us not do this. Let us just wait and see what the panel of elders have to say. Well, that's my own opinion. That is.
But if we were to follow that logic, take, for instance, a situation where the panel of elders have said these elections were not free, fair, and credible. Do you think CCC will call off their street protests?
Sorry, can you come again?
Take, for instance, a situation where the panel of elders have said, yes, these elections were not free, fair, and credible. And therefore, then they've denied ZANU-PF political legitimacy. Do you think CCC will call off the street protests?
What would be the reason for protesting when you have got what you wanted? I mean, basically, they've just denied ZANU-PF the legitimacy that they need, and ZANU-PF cannot continue with further isolation.
Yeah, but CCC haven't got what they wanted. What they wanted is SADC to commit itself to holding fresh elections ASAP.
It's unfortunate that CCC are so engrossed in power. What we need is not fresh elections. What we need is to create an environment that will create or that will provide, democratic elections. Here we can say, let's have elections every 2 months. ZANU-PF will always win because, like I said, look at the composition of ZEC itself. It's the children of ZANU-PF members that are running ZEC. So why would you want to go and have fresh elections when the composition is still the same? It's like a book that is torn inside and you cannot read it anymore. Then you go and buy a cover to make it look good. You cannot read the book. It doesn't make any sense.
I foresee a situation personally where CCC would think this is our chance to push our agenda and to make CCC the dominant party. and therefore then going ahead with their street protests, they will see it as a good strategy. But I think that would be a big mistake, because I think ZANU-PF would want to exploit that as well, because make no doubt about it, if SADC was to make that decision, ZANU-PF would be very disappointed. And ZANU-PF would want to use any excuse to punish the people of Zimbabwe. And what better way of doing so by making the country ungovernable, i.e., do nothing to stop the street protests and let the country burn down, so that SADC would be the one to say to ZANU-PF, step in and do something about it. So it could play into ZANU-PF's hands, this, and we should not make the mistake of thinking that ZANU-PF would accept a decision where they are stripped of power sitting down. That possibility, you shouldn't rule it out. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, we're trying to explore certain possibilities. Yes, it could be Triple C or Triple C also saying, since the the elders are there, we can bully the big brother. You know what I mean? If we are sitting around the elders, we can beat, and get away with it. ZANU-PF will not unleash the army or the police when the elders are there. So it's all scheming. But is it necessary? Do we really need to go that way? I don't think so. We are better off doing the diplomatic thing and not giving ZANU-PF further ammunition to discredit you guys, to say, look at what they are doing. And they're very good at doing that, pointing fingers at others. So I don't think for now, I think it's okay. Let us wait for the outcome. And I trust that the elders will do the right thing. They will not just make a complete U-turn. I do not think at this point it is possible. But I think they will water it down to make it more diplomatic, so that they get people to the table, and then we will see things moving forward. But as for let's have fresh elections.
I think we need to clarify that point. Watering it down in this case here means you allow ZANU-PF to have political legitimacy.
No, not to say no. That is a complete turnaround. That is not watering down. That's a complete turnaround. To say they will have to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy, they have to say the elections were free and fair, and that's a complete turnaround. A diplomatic sense that I mean is, they obviously, within the reports, there are some parts that ZANU-PF claim that they went overboard, like the Xavier Kasukuwere case. I personally believe Xavier Kasukuwere should have known better and done his research. What he had 5 years since he ran away. He ran away 6 years back. So he had 6 years to plan his comeback. And he should have realized that he should have been in Zimbabwe.
The point there is ZANU-PF is not really going to be content with being told, yeah, okay, maybe with Kasukuwere, Dr. Mumba's group went too far. But nonetheless, these elections were not free, fair, and credible. And therefore, then it can't be granted political legitimacy. Political legitimacy is the bottom line that ZANU-PF is looking at. So whatever the panel of elders decide, it's either they grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy or they don't. It cannot be halfway. There's no halfway house there.
It is, you know, like, it's the wording sometimes that brings people to the table and people not to come to the table. Just the wording, the way you put a message across. I believe the way that Mr. Mumba said it, well, they could have stepped on toes. I believe so. And okay, let me say toes were stepped on, right? But now what do we need? We need a diplomatic way. You have to mention the good, and the good is always being mentioned. You know, the elections were held in a calm and peaceful environment. That's a positive. But however, these are our points of concern, right? These are the what needs to be fixed, and these outweigh the good, right? And then this is why we are not going to endorse them. The same way they did in 2008 is the same way this thing can easily be done.
No.
And I don't see a complete turnaround.
I think on that point, don't mix the two. In 2008, they made it very clear that those elections could not produce a legitimate government. In 2013, that's when they started using the language you're talking about now, that the elections were substantially free, fair, and credible. Yes, there were certain shortcomings, but these are our recommendations to make sure that they don't happen again. And that is what ZANU-PF was looking for in this case. And that's why they were shocked when they were told, you know, the election process was flawed and illegal and cannot possibly produce a legitimate government. That position is not negotiable. That is, yes, I agree they could have used maybe more diplomatic language, but at that point, all the other election observers, even those who used bend over backwards to use diplomatic language, at the end of the day, they had to say, the European Union, for instance, what they said is, it's not for us to say the end product is you cannot have a legitimate government out of this, because it's not for us to certify the elections. All we can say is they were flawed. Yeah, that is a diplomatic way of saying, well, they were so flawed. In fact, last time in 2018, the European Union said they were not international standard. So if they are not international standard, you failed. You know, they didn't say it, but they don't have to say it. In this case here, the European Union failing ZANU-PF and failing to give them political legitimacy does not matter as long as the regional body does give them political legitimacy. But if the local body also turns around and say, no, we can't do that, which is what they did in 2008, that is why ZANU-PF was forced into a JNU. This one here, the panel of elders, they cannot dodge the bullet. They have got to make that decision. Right now, as we are talking, the talk is, are you going to water these criticism by the SADC observers to the point where you're saying, well, the shortcomings, yes, they are serious, but they're not serious enough to say the elections did not produce a legitimate government? Or are you saying they're so illegal and flawed, you cannot have a legitimate government, which is exactly what the Dr. Mumba's group said. That point was made very clear. This is what is spooked ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF is not negotiating for a diplomatic language here. They are negotiating for we want political legitimacy. And the question is, are you going to give it, or are you going to say no?
I don't think SADC will give it this time. I mean, it was evident. I think ZANU-PF, they did not strategize well in terms of how they operate or conduct their business, their rigging mechanism. It was poorly thought, poorly executed. It was evident for everybody to see. I don't see.
Benjamin, on that score, are you saying the 2018 it was not evident?
It was not as bad as this. This was classic.
No,
this was classic. I mean, no. Look at it this way. How can you have somebody taking down names a yard away from the election? How can you have something like that? I think that was the worst. That was shameful. And the worst part, you could find this thing in rural areas. This just goes to show whatever those videos that were and the audios that were circulating, you made them true yourselves. Of course, you gave it a nice name to say exit poll survey, but nobody was using it exiting. They were using it going in.
Well, I can tell you many examples. 2013, for instance, there were videos. The most common thing that was shown in 2013 was videos of people being bussed in from rural areas to come and vote in urban centers.
Yes, I remember that one. With IBD actually pointing it out to some of the observers to say, look at what is happening, and that the individuals that were bussed ran away from the bus, and the bus driver could not even say where he was coming from with these people.
Yeah, it was well documented. But what I'm saying, the point there, Benjamin, is that SADC, like somebody, in fact, the South African guy who was one of the election observers, Dr. Zabara or something, there's a video of him being interviewed, and he was saying what happened this year was SADC observers decided the days of see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil were over. That is a conscientious decision that they made. And yes, we have got to applaud them for that. But we cannot deny that in 2013, 2018, they had that attitude of see no evil, hear no evil, talk no evil. That is what shocked ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF honestly believed it would be business as usual for SADC. So I think on that point we can argue. I mean, but the point there is that it was a radical change on the part of SADC. And what ZANU-PF is trying to do is to see if the panel of elders could reverse all that so that they go back to the good old days where, yes, the evil that was seen would not be seen as it was so bad that the election should be condemned. It was really bad. Yes, we can put it as recommendations for improvements next election, which everybody knows. But the ZANU-PF in the past have always ignored those recommendations anyway. They get into power, the recommendations are forgotten.
Yes, with that I agree with you. But I firmly believe SADC will do the right thing and will not have a complete turnaround. It would be embarrassing, not only to them themselves as an organization. I think it would be embarrassing to what they stand for or what they claim to stand for. I honestly do not see a complete turnaround.
Well, I pray too that SADC panel of elders do not let the country down, because I honestly believe that is our best chance of a meaningful change, an end to this circus that we have got in Zimbabwe. Yes, there will be challenges if they make that decision. I do not discount the possibility that CCC would see that as a victory, and they can push for greater concessions by staging these street protests and give ZANU-PF the excuse to use violence. And it will be only purely for selfish reasons. CCC would not want meaningful democratic changes implemented. And I can tell you now, CCC, the minute they realize that if there's going to be a GNU, they will be, they will not be asked to play a major role. They will find that a bitter pill to swallow. Just as much as ZANU-PF would find that a bitter pill to swallow. So either way, the first hurdle for us to clear, the first challenge for us to clear is that the panel of elders, SADC Panel of Elders, should endorse the findings of Dr. Mumba. The second challenge would, how are we going to rein in ZANU-PF and CCC? Because these two parties would want to hold the nation to ransom. But that, I believe, would be probably a subject for the next discussion. I don't know whether you would want to give your closing remarks there, Benj, so we can finish.
Okay, thank you. So in closing, I just hope the panel of elders will do the right thing for the sake of Zimbabwe, for the sake of Southern Africa, so that we can move forward. And every country must, strive, make their organization or our organization more powerful, and show the world that we can do the right thing by our people. And then for these demonstrations, I would urge the people of Zimbabwe. We did the right thing when the ballot papers came late. We were patient, and we managed to control ourselves. Let us not be persuaded or moved into doing rash decisions or rash choices and going out to protest. Some of these things are not necessary. Look, I mean, in August, the last time round, a lot of people died, and others will be safe in their houses. So it is not wise. Let us just wait for what the elders have to say and do. And then from there, if things do not work out, I would still say the best thing is to keep calling for reforms other than participating in fraud election. That's what I got to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Yes, my closing remarks will also be that the best hope for Zimbabwe is for the SADC Panel of Elders to confirm that the election process that we've just gone through was flawed and illegal and cannot possibly produce a legitimate government. That will be the number one challenge to cross. Once we have crossed that, we should also have a clear idea of where we want to go next. And where we want to go next is to have a government of national unity, which would have individuals who are committed to implementing the democratic reforms. The same reforms that should have been implemented during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. On that, we should not compromise. That is where we should be going, and we should be clear. The primary purpose of the GNU would be to implement the democratic reforms. And we should insist on a government of national unity that will deliver that. In 2008, we did not. And we got a government of national unity that failed to implement even one token reform. That should not happen again. This is a second bite at the cherry. We must make it count. With that, thank you very much, Benjamin, and good night to everybody.
Thank you very much. Good night.